This video was inspired by the tragic passing of Rondale Moore, who, according to early reports, took his own life. Many people speculate that this tragic move was brought on at least in part due to the chronic injuries he's had to deal with. Chronically injured athletes deal with some real dark issues, and is almost always made light of until it's too late. Then people take notice. Just to be clear, when I say chronically injured, I just mean an athlete who's repeatedly injured. And I don't mean nagging injury. I'm talking about the guys who have to constantly stare down the dark path of rehab while missing extended periods of time. You might find it strange that somebody could be driven to these depths based on a few injuries that they can recover from. They could most likely still walk and live a pretty normal life. So some people might sit back and say, what's the big deal? Imagine how you'd feel seeing a bird that's lost its wings. Its ability to perform the way it was designed has been artificially interrupted. Even in birds, wing clipping creates psychological problems. The research shows that within 48 hours, the stress hormones spike and stay elevated for weeks. And that sustained elevation mirrors a depression-like state within birds. So imagine humans. Different types of birds get hit harder psychologically when losing their wings. And guess what the variable are? How well they use them and how often they use them. Dr. Justin Ross, a clinical psychologist who specializes in athlete wellness, said, when an athlete loses the ability to train or compete, there's real aspects of grief that come along with it. He goes on for a while, but what he says is essentially athletic injuries create a chain reaction of loss that go a whole lot deeper than just physical. On the surface, it looks simple, but if you keep digging down, you'll start to find that it strips away a sense of community, purpose, goals, and the worst of all, it strips away identity. I discuss aspects of this in videos about Andrew Luck, videos about Joe Burrow. I've been talking about this for years. So when I came across the Rondale Moore tragedy on my timeline, and I looked at his injury history, it's the first place my mind went. But assuming chronic injury played a major role in this tragedy would mean that this is the most severe case yet. I'm sure there were other factors, and while we'll probably never know the full depth of it, I'm sure more details of things will come out. But for today, I want to discuss it from the standpoint of what chronic injuries can do to an athlete's mental state. What you're looking at is Rondale's final time getting carted off. He probably knows it's over. Does this not look like a man who's experiencing grief, anger, sadness? Bro, it's all there. But let's back up for a minute and walk you back to this moment so that we can get a better understanding of what he might have felt. Rondale Moore burst into the college scene as a freshman, 1,258 receiving yards and 12 touchdowns. That put him atop of all the freshman receivers. This put him above names like Jamar Chase, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jalen Waddle, Justin Ross. To show you how cold this season was, bro, let's take it up a notch. If you took away all 1,258 receiving yards, he would still have just under 1,000 all-purpose yards and 2 touchdowns. When we go ahead and combine those stats, we get the only true freshman that I could find to win the Paul Hornung Award. This award is a big deal as it goes to the most versatile player in college football. Dude's future just radiated with possibility, but over the next 7 years, he would never have the opportunity to return to his freshman form. And this was all due to chronic injury that unfortunately got progressively worse. His sophomore season opened up with a 13 reception, 220 yard performance. Unfortunately, that would stand as over half his yards for the entire season. That's because he battled a hamstring injury for the vast majority of that year. It's frustrating, but it's just 1 year derailed. That alone don't lead a player to a moment like this. The next season, Rondale pulled his hamstring again. Played a total of 3 games that whole season. Just like that, bro, his college career was over, as he never got anywhere close to that freshman performance again, all thanks to injury. He gets to the league and his hamstring issue follows him throughout training camp and into the season. So he's not really able to go full speed in training camp, and he missed the first 3 games of his rookie season. That sucks, but at this point, we're doing okay. Year 2, he's still not at full speed. Starts the year off again, missing the first 3 games. Finally, he gets back, plays 8 games, but then finishes the season on injured reserve. So in year 2, he got a half a season, still no training camp, barely having time to get his footing in the league. But then finally in 2023, he was healthy enough enough to play a full season. And I say healthy enough because I don't know how truly healthy he was. Because I do find it interesting that he was able to play the full season but had worse stats than he did in his previous 2 abbreviated years. I don't know for a fact, but something like that suggests that he was not really himself. It also could have had to do with the way they were using him at this point. They may have created an offensive plan that didn't heavily include him because he'd been hurt so much. They didn't want to build too much of the offense around. And I'm not sure. Those are all just reasonable, educated guesses. So it's been 3 years and he hasn't been himself at all, not once since he came into the league. And 3 years is a long time in the NFL. So guess what happens next? He gets traded. All right, cool, new city. Let's make a good first impression, right? That was likely the mindset, and that's what he was doing. Reports say he'd been gaining momentum with the first team offense and really looking good at that point in training camp. Maybe this was the perfect situation to reset his career and get it off the ground the way that he probably always envisioned. But then, during a joint practice with the Miami Dolphins in one of the last periods of the day, he dislocated his right knee, and within 24 hours, he was completely ruled out for the entire season. It's like, bro, he was finally rebuilding within an offense and gaining momentum in a reset button, and then he gets hurt worse than ever before. To put it in perspective, he hasn't been full strength at this point for 6 years in a row. We're talking 2018 to 2024. Now this reaction's starting to make sense, especially when you add this final gut punch. If you think about what Dr. Ross said, the accumulated grief that he's gotta be feeling at this point is getting heavier and heavier. He goes into the dark, stays there for a while, but he fights his way back. After all this, he's still battling, although the scar tissue is starting to build up. But he still had hope and felt he could get past it, and he got back on the battlefield in 2025. Now he's 7 years removed from that amazing freshman season. His NFL tenure's gone nothing like he would have hoped. His college career ain't really go like he had hoped, outside of that one season. In the Minnesota Vikings' first preseason game, midway through the second quarter, Randale gets in. He's nervous and tentative, and when the punt coverage ends up being good, he tries to make his way out of bounds. But in the preseason, guys are trying to make the roster, so instead of letting him go out, the defender decides to pull him down from behind. This was the final play of Randale's career. It's heartbreaking to watch as he gets carted off. He's completely distraught, probably filled with despair. He's exasperated, and in this moment, he knows his football career is likely over. That's one level of pain, but the fact that he never truly got to show what he could really do outside of just that one college season, that might be just a couple levels deeper. Dr. Ross said the return to sport phase may have the highest level of anxiety and stress for many athletes. They worry about things like being re-injured or not returning to pre-injury form. They worry about letting their teammates down, all the people that looked up to them in their hometown. What if I'm not the same? What if I'm never the same? Those toxic questions become reasonable, but athletes don't rehab for those internal wounds. They oftentimes just sit there and keep causing problems. There's been plenty of cases where an athlete is physically ready, but mentally, bro, they remain unhealed. So in this one study, bro, they screened young athletes directly after tearing their ACL, and they found that the majority were experiencing symptoms that perfectly mirror PTSD. We're talking about like 85% having intrusive flashbacks and memories of the moment the injury happened. And because of this, being in a heightened state of alertness and anxiety, and therefore mentally blocking their bodies from performing in the same ways that they used to. A lot of times this causes us to start landing different. We start falling different. A lot of y'all have probably experienced it. It just hits a lot harder when you're that good, because the more you identify as an athlete, the harder it hits. So if you're that good, you're in the league, being an athlete's your career. And I wish it wasn't this way, but the truth is a lot of times being an athlete's your life, or at least such a huge chunk of it that when it's taken away, you lose yourself. But imagine coming back and pushing through those fears. You push them fears down as much as you can and get yourself back to the point where you can take flight. But then suddenly, bro, the unthinkable happens. You get injured again on the first play, immediately starting that process all the way over again, and you didn't even get the reward. You see what I'm saying, bro? The last time you was digging out of that hole that was deeper than it had ever been, the only thing that kept you going was the hope that once you finally got out, you would have built the strength it takes to stay out. And before you can even walk on solid ground, you immediately fall right back into the pit. If you human, a level of hopelessness gonna set in. And unfortunately, sometimes we can't fight out of it. And all I'm saying is we should be able to understand how people get in this headspace. That don't mean we encourage them to stay in that headspace, but we gotta have empathy first to understand where they was at, because otherwise it ain't no hope of getting them out. To fail is one thing. To never have the talent in the first place, yeah, that's one thing. But to have it and never be able to express it, that's gotta be one of the most painful things a human can endure. One sports psychologist put it like this. He said, injured athletes are often ill prepared, if not completely left in the dark, when it comes to the emotional and psychological aspects of injury and recovery. He says the secondary trauma, the psychological hit, can be as challenging as the injury itself. Athletes are way more likely to suppress, ignore, or refuse to confront the psychological side of the equation. You know, athletes are trained to push through pain, and it's a ton of value in that. And when I talk about this stuff, I don't talk about it from a place that we're gonna just find this perfect balance. I talk about it from a place of being frustrated that we're not even trying though. See, everybody places physical pain above mental. I pretty much look at them on an even playing field. And in the case of athletes who are chronically injured, they can even work together to make things tough. Studies show that athletes dealing with depression and anxiety actually took on average 70 days longer to recover from the same injury as athletes who are in a good mental space. And we can infer that the more you get injured and have to constantly go through the rehab process, the worse your mental space is probably gonna be. And what about this aspect? When guys retire from sports, whether they stopped after high school or went on to have a Hall of Fame career, the one thing most people miss is the camaraderie, the relationships you build being part of a team. When football is over, many guys find themselves isolated, and the isolation alone has led to many tragedies in the past. The chronically injured athlete goes through the same thing on top of everything else that he's dealing with. He's separated from his teammates most of the time, and the best he can hope for is some other guys in rehab going through a similar process around the same time. But that funny thing that happened in practice don't hit the same when you see it in the group chat but you wasn't there. And it can be real easy at that point to start kind of feeling like you on the outside. When your teammates go on a road trip, most rehabbing players don't travel. So you combine all the psychological stuff we already talked about. That feeling of isolation stretched over multiple years was not a good thing. It gets to a point where it's more painful to hear about what you missed out on than it is to just avoid talking about it at all. But your football friends, that's all they talk about. Even when they talk about something else, they reference football. And then when you're doing this as a professional, you gotta worry about your job getting taken. That's on top of all the other stuff. Cause when the next man up is replacing you, I gotta imagine that would hit a little different. My point is, chronic injuries don't just break down bodies, they break down minds, they break identity. So when you're dealing with an athlete who's chronically injured, a little sensitivity would go a long way. And that alone is not gonna fix the problem. Right now I'm just trying to say, don't add to the problem. Just like I talked about in the CTE video, just like I talked about in the chronic pain video, as fans, we really don't have an excuse to be ignorant to these things. The information is out there. If you don't want to go find it, you got somebody like me that's going to introduce it to you. Football players choose to play football. Make a lot of money, but there's a lot of risk involved. But I just want to challenge people to start seeing life through a lens of similarity, because there's so many parallels. Just because people have a public job, that don't mean you get to say whatever you want to them. A lot of times it means that in private moments, they have to deal with certain things that you could not imagine. And it works the other way. If you lead a completely different life than a pro athlete, then you have to deal with certain things that they probably never think about. So the way you find the empathy is simple. Think about the things that they have no idea you deal with. Realize the same issues you got that they can't understand. They got issues that you may not understand. We can get into some really dark spaces for a variety of reasons. And it's why I come on here, even though some people hate it, and encourage people all the time to build a relationship with God, because sometimes it gets so dark that only he can bring you out. And I know we live in a time where there's a lot of dark things going on, and the best I can do is tell you how I try to deal with it. I try to be some type of version of light, or let the light shine through me in what I do. And I don't mean running around like this all day. I mean having a generally positive attitude. Whatever your skill is, or whatever your trade, bring the light to that. And that's the best way to fight against dark. You know, sitting back and saying what these people should have did or what these people should have did, you can't control them people. All you can do is control how you interact, what you put out in the world, and how you treat people. It can be helpful to start seeing people in 3 dimensions, meaning he's a football player, but he's also a person. And not just a person, but a person who lost something. A person who might be struggling right now. I'm gonna just stop it right here, but if you picked up anything in this video, I hope you let that inform how you move going forward. Rest in peace to Rondale Moore. Condolences to his family. He honestly seemed like a really good dude. And a lot of times it's the good dudes that take things the hardest. So if you got a friend that you know is a really good cat, don't just always hit him up to lay all your problems on him, bro. And he probably not gonna tell you directly, but pay attention. And when he needs it, maybe you can give him a little boost.